Hello and welcome, and ladies and gentlemen, life is a journey filled with seasons, some that bring joy and excitement, and others that test our strength and faith. But no matter where you find yourself today, one thing remains true: you are never alone. God walks with you through every moment, through every triumph, through every storm. His presence is not conditional on how well you perform, how strong your faith feels, or how perfect your life appears. He is there always, steady and unchanging, even when everything else shifts. There are times when it's easy to see God at work. When doors open, when prayers are answered, when blessings overflow, you feel His presence so clearly. In those moments, it's natural to say, "God, I know you're here, I see you." But what about the moments when the path is uncertain? When the struggle feels unending? When the silence is deafening? That's when faith calls us to remember that just because we can't always see or feel Him, it doesn't mean He is left. Think about a child learning to walk. At first, the parent holds their hands, guiding every tiny step. But as the child grows, the parent steps back, not abandoning them, but allowing them to strengthen their legs to develop confidence. The child may fall, may stumble, may even cry out in frustration, but the parent is still there, watching closely, ready to catch them when needed. That's how God walks with us. He is not distant. He is not indifferent. Even in the moments when it seems like we're walking alone, He is there, closer than we realize. Sometimes we base God's presence on our emotions. If we feel peace, we say He's near. If we feel anxious, we assume He's far away. But God is not dependent on our emotions. His presence is a fact, not a feeling. The same God who walked with Moses through the wilderness, who stood with David in battle, who strengthened Paul in prison, is the same God walking with you today. Maybe you're in a season where life feels uncertain. Maybe you're facing challenges you never expected. Maybe you've been asking, God, where are you? If that's you, I want you to know that He hasn't left. He's still guiding, still working, still moving in ways you may not see yet. Trust that even in the silence, He is speaking. Even in the waiting, He is working. Even in the pain, He is healing. You don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to figure everything out on your own. You just have to remember this: you are not alone. No matter where you are, no matter what you face, God walks with you. Fear is one of the biggest weapons that tries to hold us back. It whispers doubt, makes us question our purpose, and keeps us from stepping into the life God has called us to live. But here's the truth: fear is a liar. It magnifies problems, distorts reality, and tries to convince us that we are alone, that we are unworthy, that we are not enough. But faith reminds us of something greater. Faith reminds us that we don't have to fight battles on our own. Faith reminds us that no matter what we face, God is walking with us. Think about how many times in Scripture God tells His people, do not be afraid. He said it to Moses before leading the Israelites out of Egypt. He said it to Joshua before stepping into the promised land. He said it to Mary when she was told she would carry the Son of God. And He says it to you today. He doesn't say it because fear isn't real. He says it because He is greater than fear. Because whatever stands before you, He has already gone ahead of you. Fear will always try to paralyze you. It will make you hesitate when you should move forward. It will make you doubt when you should believe. It will make you shrink back when you should stand strong. But faith is what allows you to walk even when you don't see the whole path. It's what allows you to trust even when you don't have all the answers. It's what gives you the courage to say, God, I don't know what's ahead, but I know you're with me. Maybe right now you're facing something that feels overwhelming. Maybe there's a decision you need to make, but fear keeps telling you, what if it doesn't work out? What if you fail? What if you're not good enough? But instead of listening to fear, I want you to ask a different question. What if God is leading me? What if He's already made a way? What if I step forward in faith and see Him move? The enemy wants nothing more than to keep you stuck. He wants to make you so afraid of the unknown that you never take the first step. But God is calling you forward. He's reminding you that He hasn't given you a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. And when you start to walk in that truth, fear loses its grip. You don't have to wait until you feel fearless to move forward. You don't have to have every answer before you take the next step. All you have to do is trust that the one who walks with you is greater than anything that stands against you. So step forward, not in fear, but in faith. Because God is already ahead of you, making a way. Life has a way of leading us down roads we never expected. Sometimes, everything seems clear and we know exactly where we're headed. Other times, we find ourselves standing at a crossroads, unsure of which direction to take. The uncertainty can be unsettling. We ask, what's next? Where do I go from here? In those moments, it's easy to feel lost, but here's what I want you to know. God is still guiding you. Even when you don't have all the answers, even when the road ahead is unclear, He is directing your steps. Your steps. It's in the difficult times that we often wonder if God is silent. We pray for clarity, but instead, we get more questions. We ask for direction, but instead, we face delays. But what if the silence isn't a sign that God is absent? But what if it's a reminder that He's still working, even when we can't see it? Sometimes, God doesn't reveal the whole picture because He's asking us to trust Him one step at a time. If He showed us everything at once, we might try to take control, to figure things out on our own. But faith isn't about knowing every detail. It's about trusting that the one who called you is leading you. Think about a GPS. When you put in your destination, it doesn't give you every turn all at once. It simply tells you the next step. And as you move forward, the next instruction comes. That's how God leads us. He may not give you the entire plan, but He gives you just enough to take the next step. And when you take that step, He provides the next one. Maybe right now you're waiting for an answer. Maybe you've been asking God for direction, for clarity, for a sign. And maybe it feels like you're not hearing anything at all. But let me tell you, just because you don't see the way doesn't mean God isn't making one. Just because you don't have the full picture doesn't mean He isn't already working things out for your good. There's a verse in Proverbs that says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge Him and He will direct your path." That's not just a nice saying, it's a promise. When you trust Him, even when things don't make sense, He will lead you exactly where you need to be. So don't let confusion stop you. Don't let the fear of the unknown keep you stuck. Even when the path isn't clear, even when the next step feels uncertain, keep moving forward in faith. Because God is guiding you. And when you trust Him, you will always end up exactly where you are meant to be. There's a reason why we were never meant to walk this journey alone. Life is heavy sometimes. The burdens, the struggles, the unexpected storms, they can feel like too much to carry on our own. And the truth is, we're not supposed to carry them alone. God never intended for us to go through life isolated, trying to figure everything out by ourselves. That's why He gives us two powerful gifts, the gift of prayer and the gift of community. Prayer isn't just about asking for things. It's about connection. It's about relationship. No, it's about knowing that no matter what you're facing, you can talk to God and He hears you. Think about that for a moment. The Creator of the universe, the one who set the stars in place, listens when you speak. You are never too small, too insignificant, or too far gone for Him to hear you. And not only does He hear you, but He cares. Every worry, every fear, every moment of uncertainty, He sees it all. He knows exactly what you need before you even say a word. But He still wants you to come to Him, because prayer isn't just about getting answers. It's about drawing closer to Him, learning to trust Him, and finding peace in His presence. And while prayer connects us to God, community connects us to one another. We weren't designed to do life alone. We need people to walk with us, to encourage us, to remind us of the truth when we forget it ourselves. That's why the enemy loves isolation. He knows that if he can get you alone, he can fill your mind with doubt, with fear, with lies that tell you nobody understands, nobody cares, nobody sees what you're going through. But that's not true. There are people who care. People who will stand with you, pray with you, and remind you that you are not alone. Think about Moses. When his arms grew tired in battle, he had people beside him to hold them up. Think about Jesus Himself. He surrounded Himself with people. He prayed with them, broke bread with them, walked with them. If even Jesus, the Son of God, valued community, how much more do we need it? Maybe you've been trying to handle things on your own. Maybe you've convinced yourself that you don't need anyone, that you're strong enough to push through by yourself. But let me tell you, strength isn't about doing it alone. Strength is about knowing when to reach out. It's about knowing that God put people in your life for a reason. So don't let pride, fear, or past hurt keep you from the very thing God is trying to use to strengthen you. Pray, because God is listening. Surround yourself with people who will remind you of who you are, who will lift you up when you feel like you can't go on. Because when we stand together, when we pray together, when we walk in faith together, we are unstoppable. There's something powerful about knowing that no matter what you've done, no matter where you've been, no matter how many mistakes you've made, God's love for you has never changed. It's easy to believe in love when we feel like we deserve it, when we're doing well, when life is going right. But what about the moments when we mess up? What about the times when we fall short, when we fail, when we don't feel worthy of grace? That's when we need to remind ourselves of the truth. God's love isn't based on what we do. It's based on who He is. And He is faithful. Think about that for a second. There is nothing you can do that will make God love you any less. Nothing. There is no mistake too big, no failure too great, no past too messy that His grace cannot cover. He sees it all, every weakness, every flaw, every broken piece, and He still chooses you. Not because of what you bring to the table, but because of who you are to Him. You are His child. And a loving Father never abandons His children. We live in a world that tells us love has to be earned, that we have to prove ourselves, that we have to be good enough, strong enough, perfect enough to be accepted. But that's not how God's love works. His love isn't a reward for getting everything right. It's a gift. And His grace, that's what meets us in the middle of our failures and says, I'm not done with you yet. Maybe you've been carrying guilt from your past. Maybe you've convinced yourself that you've made too many mistakes, that you've gone too far, that God couldn't possibly love someone like you. But let me tell you, His grace is bigger than your past. His love is stronger than your mistakes. And His mercy is new every single morning. Look at the stories in the Bible. Peter denied Jesus 3 times, yet Jesus restored him. Paul persecuted Christians, yet God turned his life around and used him to spread the gospel. The prodigal son walked away from everything, yet the Father welcomed him home with open arms. With open arms. Their pasts didn't disqualify them, and yours doesn't disqualify you. So stop believing the lie that you have to be perfect to be loved. Stop letting guilt and shame keep you from the grace that is already yours. You don't have to fix yourself before coming to God. Just come. His arms are open. His love is waiting, and His grace is more than enough, no matter how dark the night may seem, no matter how uncertain the road ahead appears. There is always hope. Life will test you. It will challenge you. There will be seasons that make you question everything. Your purpose, your strength, even your faith. But hear me when I say this. God is not finished with you. He has a plan for your life, a future filled with hope, even if you can't see it right now. It's easy to lose sight of hope when we're in the middle of the storm. When doors close, when prayers seem unanswered, when the weight of disappointment settles in, we start wondering if things will ever change. But just because you can't see the way doesn't mean there isn't one. Just because it hasn't happened yet doesn't mean God isn't working behind the scenes. Think about Joseph, betrayed by his own brothers, thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, falsely accused, locked in prison. He had every reason to believe that his life was over. But even in the lowest moments, God was still working. What looked like a setback was actually a setup. In time, Joseph wasn't just freed, he was elevated. What the enemy meant for harm, God used for good. And if He did it for Joseph, He can do it for you. Sometimes we expect hope to come in the form of immediate change, but more often, hope is what keeps us going until the change comes. It's what allows us to wake up each day and say, God, I don't know how, I don't know when, but I trust that You are still in control. Hope isn't about ignoring reality. It's about believing that God's reality is greater than anything we see in front of us. Maybe you've been waiting for a breakthrough. Maybe you've been carrying a dream that feels like it's slipping away. Maybe you've been praying for something so long that you've started wondering if God even hears you. But let me remind you, His timing is perfect. Delay is not denial. Just because it hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it won't. God never starts something without finishing it. He is a God of completion. If He placed a purpose inside of you, He will bring it to pass. If He gave you a promise, He will fulfill it. Your story isn't over. This is just a chapter. And no matter what you're facing right now, no matter how impossible things may seem, you can hold on to this truth. God's plan for you is greater than anything you can imagine. So don't give up. Don't let the struggles of today make you forget the promises of tomorrow. Keep believing. Keep trusting. Keep moving forward. Because the best is still yet to come to you every season, in every challenge, and in every moment of uncertainty. You are not alone. God walks with you. He is with you in your victories, and He is with you in your struggles. When fear tries to paralyze you, faith reminds you that He is in control. When the path ahead is unclear, trust that He is guiding your steps. When you feel weary, lean into the power of prayer and the strength of the people He has placed in your life. No mistake, no failure, no past can separate you from His love. His grace is greater than your weaknesses, and His mercy is new every morning. No matter how broken you feel, He is still writing your story, and if you are in a season of waiting, don't lose hope. Delay does not mean denial. What looks like a setback is often God's setup for something greater. So hold on, keep walking, keep believing, because the God who walks with you will never leave you. He is working, He is leading, and He is preparing you for something beyond what you can imagine. The best is still yet to come.